Okay, for a minute, we are going to talk about micro signal flow. If I ramble on a little bit here and there, you're just going to have to bear with me. The whole reason I'm addressing this is to try to help you understand what's happening in your signal flows so that that you aren't get wrapped up in things to instead of recording, mixing, and mastering and doing signal processing and or buying equipment you don't need or not understanding why you might need a piece of equipment. This is a real simple simulator. It's called LiveSpice, and you can see it up in the corner. You can download it. It's free to see basic circuits. Now that this is an actual circuit they had in the files of this piece of software. It's an emulation of an Ibanez Tube Screamer. All right, so I mean, and it looks complex. If you don't have any understanding about what's going on with circuitry, you're going to look at that probably and go, what the heck is that? Well, the whole understanding of this is that, something like this, that you can really get a little bit better understanding of your micro view. Some of the basic components you're going to recognize right away: resistors, inductors, capacitors, grounds, all kinds of stuff. Some things you might not. You're looking here and you go, what is a JFET, a BJT? What is a delay buffer, a transformer, an ideal op amp, a wire, a named wire? What is that? So, some of those things can take some reading, but the understanding of that is that when you're starting to work with that kind of stuff, is that, those kind of things are going to make it much easier for you to understand what's happening in your signal. And this, once you've set up the circuit or you put this circuit on here, that you can, it'll simulate it for you. And I've got it ran with the audio devices. You can configure it in different ways, that it's just coming out of my audio interface, and so I can hook up my mic so you can hear me speaking on it and see what's going on the signal. But you could simulate anything, any type of, a compressor, a limiter, any dang thing you wanted, you could set it up. Now this one is real basic, so don't go thinking you can download this and build, a $1 million compressor or something. You might run into a few things that might not be on this free one, but it can give you some more basic understandings of what's happening. And most of the things that are happening in a circuit, that it's basic things that change things, that make something that you want or don't want. And that can be very simple and that can be very complex. But one of the reasons why I was showing you this, because I hope you download it, because if you spend a couple weekends digging around on this and understanding that your micro signal flow, that basically what this boils down to is that it's three things. Okay, the first thing is that your biggest concern is your capture, and when you're recording, and the performance. Does that make sense? Your capture and your performance, and is it in time? Those are going to be your three biggest things. Signal processing from that point on, hopefully the better those three things are, the less signal processing you're going to have to do, hopefully, unless you're really trying to cause some effect or do something. And that can be true sometimes and sometimes it can't. There's sometimes I'll be working on my stereo field that it gets real complex, and I'm doing a whole lot of stuff that, to those signals that I've captured, because I really want to work on this stereo field or a moving stereo field or all kinds of things, that it can get complex. But, I'm trying to make sure that I'm not affecting the signal any way that I don't want to, so that it doesn't become a mess or muddy or garbage, because I'll see people, they start doing some of that stuff, and next you know they got a muddy mess, and they've thrown it in the garbage, and they go right back to just pushing the fader up a little bit, because they're like, oh no, dude, because I keep my processing as simple as possible, because otherwise I know that I don't understand none of that crap, and I'll have a mess in 5 minutes. I know, so you know what I'm saying? And I don't mean to be disrespectful to anybody, but as you understand those things, I mean, it was true for me, so if it was true for me, that it's probably been true for a whole lot of people. And so the understanding of this, the other three things is, there's your hardware, you've seen this guy's got this whole rack in his studio behind him, and every one of those processors has got some circuitry in it that's doing something, right? And any plug-in you buy, and your DAW, as it's traversing through your DAW and the signal flow through your DAW and the simulated circuitry in your DAW, what's happening there. And it could be your digital mixer, you know, I mean, or your analog mixer, or any component, your you know, preamp, your digital interface, even your microphone, you know, or the circuitry in your guitar. It can be any of those things, or can be, you want to look at the micro signal flow through those processors to understand what's happening and be able to look at the signal and analyze whether that's good or bad, or it's going to be okay, or it's not going to be okay. Does that make sense? Because when you understand that, then you're not going to sit around wet anymore about that guy's rack behind him in the studio. You're not going to be wet for that recording room. You're going to look at some studio, you're going to look at this guy's got this huge recording room, and oh my God, do I wish I had that. And you're going to be like, no, I can do that with that, you know, that frequency response, and that, you know, I can do that in my DAW with that stuff. I had to go buy this impulse response or this, that, or the other thing. And, you know, I had to do something like this with the EQ or some other thing. And I've got that room right here, dude. So, you know, and that sounds real simple, you know, and it is, but it can be very complex if you don't understand what's happening to the signal. And if you look at it to where it's all sinusoids making complex waveforms, something's happening to those sinusoids to make that effect happen. And if you look at it that way and try to bring it all the way down to the complex waveform into individual sinusoids and how what's happening to them as they go through your processing chain and your signal flow, those complexities become more and more and more and more simple until you're looking at it in a very simple way to do very complex things, because you know to add those simple things together to create very beautiful, complex situations and circuit flow to get done what you want. And I hope I didn't make that way too complex to where you're like, what, dude? You know, but that is basically what we're talking about. And this piece of equipment, I'm going to do another video on basically what happens when you're coding, and to why those things, you know, that's emulating a resistor, a capacitor, or something like that to do something to the signal to cause a low pass filter, high pass filter, or you know, whatever it might be doing, you know, through the circuitry, distortion, emulating distortion, emulating, you know, frequency responses, all kinds of things, so that you can look at every piece of hardware and every piece of software or plugins that you get in a whole new way, so that you're not looking at something that looks like magic, you know, and you're buying some $300 plugin, or, you know, you're going, dude, you got $300 plugin, I got this thing that I got for free off Voxengo that I know what that's doing to the signal, and I'm good to go, dude. You're going to spend all your money on plugins every week, and I know I don't need them because I'm dealing with things from a more micro level, so that I don't have to get wrapped up in that unless it's really doing something new and something cool that, you know, it's like, no, that's something new that is come out, that they're actually, that's a new technique that's actually enhancing the audio and those sinusoids and those complex waveforms in a way that's really cool, and not just some new compressor or some new effect or some new phaser or some new this, that, or the other thing, you know. Does that make sense? And with this, it's really cool because you can go through at every point and tap on these things and really see what's happening to the signal at those different points. I mean, you can go through the whole circuit and say, what is happening there? What is it doing there? I mean, what is happening to the signal at that point? And combined, you know, you're going to hold yourself a timber, da, and really see what's happening to the signal. And, you know, and as you sit there and spend maybe a few weekends, you might spend a month on the weekends or something if you're busy, and really sit there and just kind of investigate that a little bit and those basic components, so that when you're looking at this, that it's, you know, my hope in this is that you might become an audio engineer, but even if you don't, that when you look at a new plugin, or you look at some piece of some hardware piece of equipment, or you know, some kind of new effect or some processor or some type of, you know, emulation of some room with reverb or this or that, or, you know, any of those kind of things that you may see while you're messing around in your DAW and you're digging around on plugins and what's going on, that you've got a whole new look at it about what is actually happening there and how you can get that done without getting yourself wrapped up in that and buying a bunch of stuff you don't need. Because like I've said before, that a lot of times that people will say as little processing as possible, because, you know, when you start doing complex processing to some kind of waveform or some complex waveform or some timbre of some instrument, that, you know, if you don't really know what you're doing to that waveform, those combined sinusoids, that, you know, all of a sudden you end up with mud real quick when, you know, there was one thing happening that, you know, if you had a low pass that, high pass that, or said, no, I'm not using that plugin because of I know that it's doing that to those sinusoids or causing that harmonic distortion, or that noise that's trying to emulate some analog crap that I don't want in my system anyway, that, you know, you're going to have a whole new look at what's going on there. You know, a prime example is, you know, I mean, there's lots of examples, so I'm not going to get into that. But, you know, in the reality nowadays, that if you really understand signal processing and you got a laptop and a couple bucks to buy some decent equipment and a professional version and a few pieces of additional software that probably aren't going to cost you very much, that you can emulate an entire studio that costs somebody millions and millions and millions of dollars. I mean, just from understanding that you break it down to the basics. Those are sinusoids, then they become complex waveforms, and then those complex waveforms are mixed with other complex waveforms until you have an end product that is a mix, and then you have to worry about formatting and what's happening in the formatting process with truncation and things like that, that's going to affect the audio and the signal of what's happening there. Because you can most assuredly, even a simple example like that is take, you know, your wave file and look at it, even through something like here, and then look at it after it's been crushed into an MP3, what exactly happened to the wave file. You can loop some area in the song that's holding some kind of timbre, you know, so you can actually see and look at what's going on to it, and look at it in the spectrum to see what's happened to it. And those things, you know, can save you so much time of going, why do I need that new plugin? Or I don't have all this equipment. All I've got is my DAW, and I've got, you know, some monitors and a not expensive interface and a few things, maybe a preamp. And, you know, I've made sure that my, you know, I mean, that way that, you know, that when you don't have that kind of money, you don't sit there thinking that you need a lot of stuff that you don't. You know, or get wet about a lot of stuff that you're not going to ever be able to afford, you know, and you probably don't need so that you can do what you want to do anyway. So my hope is that you'll end up downloading this piece of software and just kind of taking a look at that and understand what I'm trying to convey. I'm going to do another video on how this relates to actual code also. And this is a real simple version. You can get much more complex simulators that you can spend a few bucks on if you got the money. And you can get some very, you know, some ones that aren't as good as this. And also, if you dug around a little bit and you're really into it, instead of spending $300 on a new plugin, and you got a hold of somebody that really understands this simulation, you said, hey, dude, I'm going to give you $250, and I want you to sit down with me with this, you know, on Skype or something, and explain to me what's happening there in this compressor or this limiter or this, you know, this new phaser or this, you know, binaural pan or, you know, whatever it's going on, or truncation, anything that's happening, any kind of processor that's a hardware or software processor you might buy, that there's probably a better chance that you'd be better off taking your money, trying digging around, finding something like that, and handing them a couple $100 out of your pocket rather than buying that plug-in. Then you find out that you have that plug in your DAW combined with that other thing, and he says, well, what that doing anyway, dude? You know what I mean? The only thing that's happening is a little bit of distortion. Here's a, you know, a brown noise distortion wave file, and here's, you know, some kind of, you know, wave shaper, you know, tool that, you know, you can shape the distortion a little bit to add a little bit of that in their harmonic content, and you're good to go, you know, and your money might be better spent there. Does that make sense? So that was in the hopes that you could see that, and it might kind of change your path a little bit about understanding the micro view of your signal flow, so that, you know, it can save you a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of headache, and a lot of I wish I could have this or that, and I wish I could, when I'm processing, that I know what's happening. That way that I'm spending my time, in other areas rather than so much time worried about my processing and what's happening there because I don't have any clue. So I hope that helps a lot. Peace, hope, love.